Hi, everyone. So, hopefully the first breakout was informative, and what Yasser and I are going to facilitate is discussion about planning and goals. So these are three other elements in the Be a Vibrant Club workshop. So I'm going to share my screen. And again, please, jump in with questions or feedback, anything that you have that we want to share. So give me 1 second.
The exciting thing is this is version 2.0, so
yeah,
it's an improvement from the last session.
Yeah, we are continually improving. So are you all seeing the Be a Vibrant Club with the different blocks? Okay. So the ones we're going to focus on for the next half hour is deciding what you'd like your club to be like in 3 to 5 years, deciding on annual goals and entering them into Rotary Club Central, and coaching new and continuing members in leading. And as we discussed in the larger group, these are all connected. So as we go through R3, you likely will see linkages to the other 7, right? They all work in tandem. Okay. So decide what you'd like your club to be like in 3 to 5 years. We're going to go through the 3 of them. And again, just feel free to interject if you have questions or comments. And what I'm going to do is bring up, so again, this is a hyperlink to the Rotary Club Health Check, which is this document here. And I apologize for scrolling. If you can look away for a second. So this is the Rotary Club Health Check. Have any of you used this before?
No, I've never seen it.
So one of the things that's really interesting about the Be a Vibrant Club document and the training is it introduces us to Rotary templates and tools that we didn't know exist, but they do, which is kind of neat. So the club health check, I'm in healthcare, and this is like a wellness check. So it has a whole slew of questions with checkboxes, yes, nos, in different categories. This one is club experience. And again, I apologize for the scrolling. And just like with with your physical or your wellness check, here's your prognosis based on how you responded to the previous questions, which is kind of interesting. And again, there's a lot of hyperlinks in this. And there's a series of these, and I'll just scroll through them quickly just to show you what the categories are. Service and social activities. Again, just how's the club doing? With a prognosis. Everything about members. Public image. And it's interesting, if you try something like this, not everyone is going to answer each checkbox the same way, right? I mean, but just getting the variety of responses would be interesting. Business and operations, which is part of our Be a Vibrant Club workshop, the things about like bylaws and club constitution and board and infrastructure, things like that. So this is really interesting. And I remember when I first saw it, I thought, well, this is really helpful. There's one issue that we'll talk about in a second, and then of course, what you want to have is what's next. So based on the health check, what do we need to do? And as the previous group discussed, this next steps is really kind of something that maybe the club board takes ownership of. Meaning, what as a club do we need to really focus on based on the results of that assessment, if you will? The whole club may be involved, but this may be like a board activity. So if none of you have used this, just a couple observations. You could use this as a member survey, and some clubs have done that. They've just taken this document, sent it out, and said, please fill this out. And that's fine, but there's a lot of questions here. There's a lot of boxes to check or not check. So it may be that your clubs decide to maybe focus on one element of this to focus on. So since membership is so important to all of our clubs, maybe start with this and just get a pulse from the club of how they feel the club is doing, or start with the board first and get a sense of how the club is doing. So with these Rotary tools and templates, it's not like you have to use them exactly as they're presented. You may use them in pieces, you know. But I found this really helpful. I see that past District Governor Dick is on. Dick, have you had experience with the health check? And if so, what has been your experience, either yourself or with the clubs that have used it?
Yeah, this is actually a tool that developed several years ago when I was Rotary coordinator. And so I have seen a lot of clubs throughout the West that have used this. And I think it is a very, very beneficial tool. It makes us focus on ourselves. So often we make assumptions and we aren't reading our clubs properly, or there are sentiments in the club that are not being expressed at the meeting. So I think tools like this are very helpful.
And so again, just now that you're in the training and you've got the Be a Vibrant Club document, you just need to click on the hyperlink if you don't have it, and you'll get a version of the health check. Similarly, there's a strategic planning guide. And if you click on that, it's going to open up this document, and I'll just scroll up to the top. So it's a strategic planning guide. The district also has strategic planning tools that you can use, or your club can use. In the larger opening session, I think Richard had mentioned that something like 30% of the clubs had goals entered into Rotary Club Central, and it's, we're 1 month into the Rotary year. So a lot, and this is one of the questions when we did the survey, that it was a low percentage of the clubs, or those of you who were in clubs, that have done or have a strategic plan. It's just really important to have one. And as we'll talk about throughout this breakout session, developing the plan is not all that difficult. Executing the plan is really difficult. And so we'd be interested in your ideas on this. But this is like a lot of other strategic planning guides. It's got kind of a nice overview of what you want to try to accomplish with your plan, different phases to it. And it's got some tools and templates down here. Determining your status. How's our club doing now? If you think about it, just being part of this Be a Vibrant Club workshop is in the sense to get a handle on how our club is doing now. And the health check is, how is our club doing now, right? So there's all sorts of tools on getting a sense of kind of the status quo. Strengths and weaknesses. So some of you may be familiar with like a SWOT analysis. What's a club doing well? How can it be improved? And then opportunities and threats, which are more external. So like down here, opportunities and challenges in the community. Some of the things that are making it hard for us to be successful isn't on us, it's on the environment. Some of us may be in communities that are struggling right now. So that's a community challenge that we need to address, because we want to be successful in our community. Developing a vision. What do we want our club to look like? Again, that's kind of this whole Be a Vibrant Club workshop. Develop the plan with priorities and goals and timelines. I mean, this kind of template here is really important to populate if the club is going to develop a plan. The key is to execute all of this. and to see what's working and what's not. Even the best plans, not everything is going to work. And so you want to be monitoring a plan to see how it's working and whether we need to make adjustments.
Jeff,
Yes.
may I ask you a question? I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, when I was Gary King's district operations, in relationship to the club plans, prior to the start of the Rotary year, he had me contacting all of the presidents. I talked to all of them probably 2 and 3 times. And we started the year with almost 80% of the clubs having their plans in place online. Are we doing that? I mean, are we talking with them and reminding them and encouraging them and giving them people that they can talk to for assistance if they need it? We had 2 or 3 people in the district who agreed to help clubs in that way. I don't know what is being done right now. And so I'm just curious, with that 30% rate, how is the district helping with that?
So I don't know, Yasser, do you want to take that? Because as governor,
Sure.
like better
Yeah,
handle.
Yeah, no, I'm very glad about you made that question. I'm taking notes. It seems like we're very good at, as we get closer to pets, we start reminding people about entering goals, but that happens way late in the game. But I think there's certainly an opportunity, and I'm taking notes because of your question. There's certainly an opportunity for us to get way ahead of it and start encouraging people to start at least thinking about their goals and start early on. So by the time they get to pets, that's already been done. So maybe instead of using pets as a place to enter your goals, that's like way before even pre-pets. That's your homework way ahead. So really like your question, and I definitely made a note of it.
All right. And I would mention, in the same vein, we were encouraging them to be talking to their clubs about that succession planning. You know, who is your president-elect for the following year? Because a lot of people simply hadn't thought about it. And so we got a lot of those president-elects coming to pets or participating in pets to give them that head start.
Which goes along with prepare members for future roles to smooth
Exactly.
leadership transitions. Definitely, that came up in the previous session as well, that these go hand in hand, very close.
And if you can identify a few people in the district who are willing to help the presidents do that, or the president-elects do that, that was so very important, because just somebody they could talk to one-on-one that would, take a half an hour and run through it with them, with some of the samples, that kind of thing. It was very, very helpful.
I think one observation based on what you were saying, Donna, is that this process of planning and goal setting is not hardwired in our clubs.
Right.
If it was hardwired, then you and Governor Gary would not have had to do those reminders. And the fact that now we're at 30% means that even if it was successful that year, it wasn't hardwired. It wasn't in the culture of the club that we're going to be doing this every single year, which, as Yasser said, gets into succession planning and making sure that the incoming leaders are just as aware and just as involved and understanding the importance of having plans and goals.
And I think hardwire into the district. We have so many small clubs, and they're the ones who need the kind of help I'm talking about primarily. I mean, a couple of the bigger clubs, but the bigger clubs are much better at dealing with this. They have more people in leadership. They understand it better, stronger business experience. But the small clubs often struggle with this, and they need that help. And this is just personal, but I think the district needs to be offering and encouraging.
So I'll put in a plug. We have a strategic planning cadre. We set it up a few years ago, whose sole purpose is to help clubs with planning, but we are a support function. So if we are promoted, and we're on the district website, if we are promoted, then we get requests for help. And we've done a few, but we should be doing like 30 or 40 club support activities every year. But there's opportunities to grow that, but that support function is in the district just for what you said, Donna, and at least it is there to help the clubs.
Donna, let me ask another question here. If PETS is planned around March timeframe, what would be your recommendation that we start pushing the clubs to enter goals?
I started in November. I started in November contacting the clubs.
Awesome.
Very good.
One other thing we wanted to show about the goals is the notion of Rotary Club Central, and I am logged in. So I logged in to Rotary.org, went to Rotary Club Central, and it will come up with my club, and it's got these different tabs. So as I understand it, any club member can go into Rotary.org and see the goals and the progress for the club. They may not be able to change them or set them. The president can set them, or the president-elect. The secretary, I believe, has access to make changes to this, but I can view them. And as we talked about in the larger session, showing the progress towards goals would be nice for like club assemblies. You know, how are we doing on our membership goals and what's working, what's not? So I love this. I mean, I really think when Rotary developed this, this was a huge advancement to help clubs not just document goals, but be able to show progress. So this is a really nice tool if you haven't seen this. Any thoughts or questions? And again, you may not have seen this before. If you haven't, if you log into Rotary and go into your, log in through My Rotary, you can find Rotary Club Central right here under Manage and Club and District Administration. There's different ways to get to it, but it's really nice. And I'm glad that Rotary did this, but again, it's like a hidden gem to a lot of us. So any questions about that? And again, our recommendation is that yes, every club member can go in and see them, but I think the club leadership should present to the club, here's how we're doing.
Jeff, I have a question on this. Similarly to how there's goals are lacking in here, is the data pretty accurate that we're seeing?
Okay, that's a really good question. And unless things have changed, the only parts of Rotary Club Central that are automatically correct or updated are going to be membership and foundation. So foundation giving is going to be in there. Membership is going to be in there as long as the club secretary is keeping the data updated and accurate. But the other items, like service projects, youth programs, things like that, they have to be manually entered by the secretary. So the website isn't going to know how many service projects have we done, how many students went to RILA, things like that. So there's a lot of it that's going to be manual entry, if I understood your question, Yasser. But a few of the items like the foundation, how the club is doing for the foundation and for membership, those would be automatic.
Okay, this is good to know. Yeah.
Okay. Really helpful tool. Okay, going back to, so we've taken a look at the health check, the strategic planning guide, and again, the district has resources, and that again is through the strategic planning cadre, which the district set up to support clubs in strategic planning. And we talked about setting the annual goals. I'm sure there are clubs that may have goals, but they didn't enter them into Rotary Club Central. And again, it's like, if you're not going to document goals, then why have them? Then there's this last one, coaching new and continuing members in leading. So this leadership and action guide, this is really a training program. It brings up this nice one-pager brochure, but there's not a lot of meat in it. And I will tell you, this is one that I was blown away when I first saw it. There's another link here to the actual contents, like a curriculum for training leaders or training potential leaders. And if you click on this, Leadership in Action, it brings up a zip file of 10 leadership modules from introduction, communication, leadership styles, all this. And I think this was done in the early stages of when Rotary.org was developing its own training modules. Because we can log into Rotary and go to the Learning Center and get a lot of content. This is this kind of separate set of modules for leadership training, and each one has kind of learning objectives and, you know, all the different items for leadership training. I like that it has one for innovation. So this is really, I mean, again, I was blown away when I saw this, just because I didn't think that Rotary had put all this content together. But this is to prepare and equip your leaders. Yes, they're going to go to PETS if they're a president-elect. Yes, they may be taking Learning Center courses, but this is really helpful. And so if a club has its kind of internal training, then this is a nice curriculum to kind of think about and walk through. So again, it's one of those where if you don't have the Be a Vibrant Club document, you're not going to have a link to the brochure, and you're not going to have a link to the zip file with all this curriculum. So if anything, our hope is that by having this workshop and by reinforcing it at PETS like we did last year, there's no reason for clubs not to be able to equip their incoming leaders. Get them prepared. Like Donna was pointing out, you know, we don't want to start at PETS.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've got all that time, as was mentioned earlier. Let me go back to, you know, we've got to prepare members to be in their future roles, which means they've got to be identified, you know, have a pipeline, have them identified, and then put as much time into preparing and equipping them to be successful. So those are the three kind of items within our planning and goals area. I'm going to stop sharing. And we've got about 5 minutes, I think, before we go into the next session. So what questions do you have? Feedback, thoughts, best practices, what's worked well in your clubs? The fact that Richard, when we did the survey, there were like 30% of the clubs that had goals entered. When we did our poll, planning and goals were kind of low in terms of how many of the clubs who were represented went through it. So any thoughts, feedback on maybe why it's not higher than it is? Interestingly, if we had done this training when Governor Gary was governor and Donna was his ops person, and they were at 80%, we would have scored higher for that question. But a lot of it was because of the pushing and the poking that Governor Gary and Donna were doing.
Yeah. Okay.
I would suggest that it would be helpful. The presidents, and again, I'm talking primarily about the mid and smaller clubs, they need that contact. Expecting them to make the contact, they don't know who to call. They don't know quite what kind of reception they'll get. They don't know. They don't want to appear stupid, afraid to ask a silly question. Whereas if we could set up something that contacts them, you know, are you having any problems? Is there anything you need help with? And then give them a referral. It makes such a difference.
And I think we've talked about in assistant governor, lieutenant governor training, what an important role they have since they already have the connections with their clubs, to kind of ask those questions and just say, what help do you need, and make sure that they have the resources. So I think that's also been reinforced with the assistant governor role.
I will risk saying that in my 2 experiences in dealing with the clubs in some depth, if we are fortunate, 50% of the assistant governors are doing that, if we are lucky. Many clubs do not even know who their assistant governor is.
Well, it's interesting. Some of the priorities in the district strategic plan are inherently collaborative, meaning the district and the clubs must work together to accomplish what the plan is saying, which means the interchange and the communication and the collaboration have to be in place. And
I
in many
agree.
ways,
I agree.
the district is in the best position to kind of spur that relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Already just pulling together and,
Other thoughts, comments, feedback?
Rotary.
Anything, Dick, from your experience to add to this?
And,
One of the things that
is it okay if I?
occurred to me a few minutes ago is that
Problems?
one of the problems with the goal setting and the strategic planning and all is I'm not real sure that there's anyone ever assigned in the club to that responsibility specifically. And I would suggest that the president-elect be given that responsibility so that they can, typically you come back from pets and everyone's gung-ho and they start working on their goals, and then they set them aside. They don't have a plan to look at them again, and they don't. But if the president-elect is assigned that task, then they can monitor them through the first half of the year, have a special board meeting where they review them, and then, as Donna suggested, November, December, they're going to be starting to train for the president so they can pass that task on to the next person after they've wrapped up the current year. So I think that we need to start giving them a blueprint for succession, because I think that we say there should be succession and this is how it's done, and the AG should be working with the club, but we don't really have a plan for that to happen.
Again, it's all in execution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All in execution. Interestingly, Yasser at the district level as the district governor-elect is kind of in that role, like you were saying, Dick. So while
Yes.
Richard is governing the district, Yasser is like one level below with all the planning and the preparation and making sure that we've got everything set, because it's a perfect role for the incoming leader to take that ownership.
And it fits in perfectly with the zone model, because in November, Yasser is going to start assuming training and leadership responsibilities as a district governor. So then that is a very good point to transfer those responsibilities of his E year to Tom.